Warm welcome to the program. I'm Millicent Walker in Lagos. Well, today the Russia-Ukraine war enters its 251st day. Ukraine's foreign ministry spokesperson has said that Russia should be expelled from the group of 20 major economies, and President Vladimir Putin's invitation to the summit in Bali next month be revoked. Spokesperson Oleg Nikolenko wrote on Twitter, Mr. Putin publicly acknowledged ordering missile strikes on Ukrainian civilians and energy infrastructure. With his hands stained in blood, he must not be allowed to sit at the table with world leaders. Putin's invitation to Bali summit, he says, must be revoked and Russia expelled from the G20. Meanwhile, Russia does not need a presidential decree to formalize the completion of a partial mobilization of reservists to fight in Ukraine, and none will be issued. President Vladimir Putin declared Russia's first call-up since World War II, September 21, after a series of military defeats. The announcement triggered an exodus of draft-age men, with hundreds of thousands heading for countries including Georgia, Armenia, and Kazakhstan, while more than 2,000 people were detained at anti-mobilization protests. Russia had already said it had recruited the 300,000 reservists it needed in just over a month, and that no more were required. But the Kremlin's refusal to issue a formal decree ending recruitment may increase concern among Russians that the mobilizations could still be restarted. Mr. Putin had said on Monday that he would consult with legal experts to see if a new presidential order was necessary. Back in Ukraine, Russia fired 4 missiles into the southern Ukrainian port city of Mykolaiv overnight today, demolishing half an apartment building, a school, and killing at least 1 resident. The attack happened a day after it unleashed a barrage of missiles on several cities, including the capital, Kyiv. Rescue workers recovered the body of an elderly woman from the rubble of the apartment block early today. Lyubov Fanta, a 69-year-old survivor of the attack, was rescued from underneath the rubble and was suffering from concussion. A nearby 2-story school was severely damaged. The facade was turned off by the force of the blast that left a massive crater. UA's Anna Chernikova joins me now from Kyiv. Hello, Anna. It's good to see you. Thanks for joining us. I mean, you appear to be in the middle of the street in Kyiv.
Well, actually, I'm at the place that has electricity because there is no electricity at my place. There are shortages for this past couple of days, and yeah, we have to survive the way we can.
Okay, perhaps we should start with that in terms of the damaged infrastructure and the rationing electricity and water. What's the situation?
Yeah, so the shelling that happened on Monday actually targeted critical infrastructure. This includes, of course, electricity, first of all, and water supply. So for the moment, what we have is that almost all the repair works are done. So basically, the connection, the supply is back. However, government has to plan shortages due to the fact that well, there is no enough, and the system should be balanced as soon as possible. And this is why the central part of the country, as well as the city of Kyiv itself and east part of the country, all these areas have shortages. These are scheduled shortages. However, the schedule is not perfect now, and the schedule now could vary. So there is no particular, information that there are slots for electricity shortages. And basically, what happened to me today, that it was no really a this was not in the schedule, or it was in the new schedule that society has not yet received. So basically people just adjust the way it is and well, get ready that electricity could be cut any time. However, government is saying that situation is getting better, at least if no new heats would happen in the nearest days. In terms of water supply, there are also shortages and troubles. However, situation is not, I should say, is not completely critical, but there are some difficulties in different parts of the country, and in Kyiv, for instance, also in some neighborhoods in some areas. So basically, due to more Monday attacks, 80% of the city of Kyiv was with no electricity at all, because one of the power plants that supply a big part of the city was actually damaged. But today the situation is better. However, as I already said, shortages are amplified as well as the system should be balanced.
And, you know, staying with that, what's the feeling on ground in Kyiv? This is especially when you hear the reason for what, you know, you and other, you know, Ukrainians in the city are going through at the moment with the rationing and the shortages. Russian president saying that the strikes, which targeted infrastructure, the decision to freeze participation as well in the Black Sea grain export program were responses to drone attacks on Moscow's fleet in Crimea.
Well, I cannot really confirm or deny that. However, experts and Ukrainian officials, authorities say that this cannot actually be connected. So there is no really a possibility that Russian Federation could actually, you know, realize and prepare this kind of attacks in one day or a couple of hours. So this is something that needs proper preparation. And of course, this looks like just continuous attacks on the critical infrastructure. So it doesn't really look like a response to Crimea, to Sevastopol flagship attack and battleship attacks that Russia implies. So this is basically the position of the Ukrainian officials, that this just doesn't look like a response. It looks like a planned attacks on the critical infrastructure, which is happening for the past months already.
And in the middle of all of this, Anna, you know, President Zelensky has been meeting members of the international community. We understand he met with French President Emmanuel Macron, discussing strengthening defense capabilities. But is there also talk about how to shore up what has been lost in terms of the infrastructure in Kyiv and other cities?
We know that President Zelensky discussed air defense with Mr. Macron. This is at least what we have, what was reported after their talk. I think, and it looks like that, of course, energy infrastructure question is also discussed. At least we understand for the moment that this is one of the main issues that Ukraine is facing, and of course, well, this is something that is in line with air defense as well. So attacks on the critical infrastructure is as dangerous as attacks on the civilian residential buildings, civilian infrastructure in general, on the cities, because of course winter is coming and people, well, it would be very difficult for people to survive without all these critical facilities. So of course this, and President Zelensky said this already a couple of times, that air defense and critical infrastructure defense and restoration, these are the main questions for discussion now, and it looks like President Zelensky actually, and other Ukrainian officials on the top level, put this question as a priority.
And Anna, what is happening in Kherson?
Well, what we know that Ukrainian forces continue their counteroffensive. We are talking about the right bank of the river of Dnipro. Russian forces reportedly are preparing for the defense. So as at the head of Ukrainian Intelligence has already confirmed, and also Institute for the Study of War made the same conclusion that Russian forces are getting ready to defend the city. So it's not going to be an easy come through, and this doesn't look that Russian forces are just getting ready to run away. They are preparing for the defense, and they are preparing for the defense of the left bank as well. However, we see we hear from the general staff that actions are happening. We don't have particular details of these actions. Also, intelligence and Ministry of Defense saying basically the same, that this month would be, of course, very important for this area, and a lot of changes could be actually seen and could happen. So, everyone is just waiting for how the situation will turn up there. But it is definitely that the battle for Kherson would be quite serious and would be, a very important one, and it might happen this month or next month. Again, this information we unfortunately do not have, and we can just analyze whatever is said by the officials. So we just see that this would be a very big battle for Kherson.
Oh, and Anna, I would like to thank you. We appreciate you sharing your ration with us, talking to us about the latest with this invasion. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Well, staying with the invasion, Britain has warned Russian President Vladimir Putin of severe consequences if Moscow uses nuclear weapons in Ukraine, saying such a step would change the nature of the conflict. Foreign Minister James Cleverly also urged Russia not to impede grain exports and said that increasingly desperate statements from the Kremlin were designed to distract from its faltering war effort. Mr. Putin has said that Russia hasn't talked about using nuclear weapons in Ukraine, saying instead that Kyiv could create and detonate a dirty bomb. But Mr. Cleverly said it was an absurd claim to say Ukraine planned to detonate such a bomb, adding that Putin's rhetoric around nuclear weapons was irresponsible talk.
Earlier today, I spoke. Russian missiles again struck Kyiv and other cities, destroying critical national infrastructure and depriving Ukrainians of water and electricity. Earlier today, I spoke to our ambassador in Kyiv, and I heard again of the extraordinary resilience of Ukraine's people in the face of Russian aggression. At the weekend, Russia suspended its participation in the Black Sea Grain Initiative, which has allowed the exportation of 100,000 tons of food every day, including to some of the least developed countries in the world. Putin is exacting vengeance for his military failures on the civilians of Ukraine by cutting off their power and their water supply, and on the poorest people in the world by threatening their food supplies. Over 60% of the wheat exported under the Black Sea Grain Initiative has gone to low and middle income countries, including Ethiopia, Yemen, and Afghanistan. It would be unconscionable for those lands to be made to suffer because of Putin's setbacks on the battlefield in Ukraine. I urge Russia to stop impeding this vital initiative that is helping feed the hungry across the world and agree to its extension.
And the U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken has spoken with China's Foreign Minister Wang Yi on a call over Russia's war against Ukraine and the threat it poses to global security as well as economic stability. According to the U.S. Department of State, Mr. Blinken also discussed with his Chinese counterpart on the need to maintain open lines of communication and responsibly manage U.S. China relations. After the call, Mr. Wang Yi said Washington should not let itself be blinded by ideological bias when dealing with China. The State Department spokesman said Washington, D.C. was not seeking to change China.
We would characterize the phone call as productive, as useful. It was professional. Secretary Blinken and Foreign Minister and State Councilor Wang Yi had an opportunity to discuss a number of issues, but Secretary Blinken, for his part, thought it was important to raise, once again, Russia's continued war against Ukraine and the threat it poses to global peace and economic stability and prosperity. This is something that the PRC has heard from us directly a number of times in recent months. They've heard it from us over the phone. They heard it from us in Bali when Secretary Blinken met with Wang Yi for over 4 hours, almost 5 hours at the time. They heard it in New York when Secretary Blinken and Wang Yi met at the time. I think it's fair to say that Secretary Blinken last night did not hear anything when it comes to the PRC's approach to Russia's war against Ukraine that we haven't heard before. I'm not going to characterize it, but of course the PRC has spoken publicly to its approach. Interestingly, President Putin has also spoken to the PRC's approach, made an interesting comment, as I recall, that the Russians have heard privately from the PRC about concerns that the PRC has regarding Russia's prosecution of this war against the people of Ukraine. It's really no surprise that the PRC would voice these concerns, at least in private.
Meanwhile, the United Nations said no ships involved in a UN-brokered Ukraine grain export deal were transiting a Black Sea maritime humanitarian corridor on the 9th of October 29, when Russia said its vessels in Crimea were attacked. Russia has accused Ukraine of using air and maritime drones to target vessels in the Bay of Sevastopol early on Saturday, even suggesting one of the drones may have been launched from a civilian vessel chartered to export food from Ukrainian ports. Ukraine has neither confirmed nor denied it was behind the attack, but says Russia's navy is a legitimate military target. Responding to Russia's accusation about possible misuse of cargo ships, UNA Chief Martin Griffiths told the UN Security Council that no cargo ships were in the corridor as of that night.
We're very encouraged by Russia's assurance, and this is an important, not merely a distinction, it's an important fact, that it is not pulling out of the initiative, as has been said by some. It is only temporarily suspending activities in the implementation of the initiative. The Russian Federation has deployed a highly professional team at the JCC for its implementation, and they are still there. We look forward to welcoming them back as a full and active participant as soon as may be in the fulfillment of the goals that we have all agreed and signed up to. The United Nations is ready to address concerns, listen to suggestions from all sides. We've had many discussions as we approach the 120-day extension point on November the 19th, which can be where the initiative can be renewed, NEM-CON. Today, emergency measures were taken to release some of the cargo from Ukrainian ports and to inspect some of the 100 or so vessels that are queued up and ready to go. We need to continue fulfilling our commitments and act in concert as before, Our understanding is that initiative and commitments remain in force even during this suspension of Russia's participation. Today, 12 ships sailed out from Ukrainian ports and 2 headed in to load food. All these ships were previously inspected by the full membership of the Joint Coordination Center.
The impact of these 2 agreements has been made clear in a short period of time, with massive global welfare effects. Grain exports from Ukraine and the Russian Federation increased substantially. Wheat exports from the Russian Federation tripled between July and September, while wheat exports from Ukraine more than quadrupled over the same period of time, resulting in lower food prices in international markets and improved access to food for humanitarian actors.
Unclear briefing. Mr. President.
And when the Nord Stream gas pipelines ruptured near the island of Bornholm last month, residents felt the Ukraine war move a lot closer, exposing the isolation of Denmark's easternmost points and renewing fears of Russian aggression. Now, the rocky Baltic Sea island of about 40,000 people has a strategically important location between Denmark's capital, Copenhagen, and the Russian city of Kaliningrad. Ulrike Skete, chief of Bornholm's Home Guard, a volunteer branch of the Danish military, said the Nord Stream ruptures renewed the island's crisis awareness.
After Russia entered Ukraine, attacked Ukraine, also we here on Bornholm have become more aware that things have changed, and as you might know, Bornholm is situated in the middle of the Baltic Sea, at the entrance basically, and we are a corkscrew entering the Baltic Sea, and therefore we have a strategic importance for not only Denmark but also NATO. So yeah, things have most definitely changed. Well, the level of crisis awareness have most definitely increased, not only here on Bornholm, but also in Denmark generally. However, here on Bornholm, it's more specific because, as I mentioned before, we are in the middle of the Baltic Sea and we are situated with a lot of water around us. So we are in a vulnerable position, and we know that.